The game isn't bad, you are. This is often a cope line, used by players of hardcore games, maybe to excuse bad game design or just make themselves feel superior to people that just didn't quite get it. But I've thought about it a lot, and I really mean it. I especially came to that conclusion whilst playing the very first Kingdom Come Deliverance game that came out in 2018. Now hopping into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, every second of that saying is still stuck in the back of my mind. Every frustration, every rage, and every bit of euphoria. The game isn't bad, you are. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times that I hated Kingdom Come 2 as I was playing through it, swearing at characters or even just the combat that I was being dragged back into, knowing that there was a fight that I just couldn't win, but I couldn't even run from it either. So I wanted to actually really delve into whether it's actually the case in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, or am I just being gaslit by one of my favorite games when there actually are blatant issues within it. I hope we're far enough into the future of the game's release now that there are going to be some spoilers for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Pretty light story spoilers though, and not really any outcomes for the missions. But if you really don't want to know any of the existence of certain missions, this might not be the video for you. About halfway through the game, you team up with initially what you think is the main villain, but a man called Jan Zizka. From this point onwards, you are two bandits on the road trying to gather back your strength, building up your squad by using one of your friends, the Dry Devil. But one of these missions holds a very interesting point for this video. This is the ambush mission. Now within the ambush mission, you and Jan Zizka are holding up a train. You want to capture a bombard cannon that caused you so much grief in the past, and in order to do so, you use guns. Now guns or hand cannons within Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 are incredibly inaccurate, incredibly annoying, and really are only effective if you're point blanking somebody. But within this mission, they are your main weapon that you have to use to hold up these boys in kind of a funny moment. They don't quite work the way they're supposed to. Because of this, a melee ensues. It is you, Jan Zizka, and a few other men ambushing this cart, and they are pretty well armed, especially the leader of this enemy faction. Well, he's got a lot of armor on and he's going to cause a lot of damage. Now, this might just be a normal battle mission to many people, but to me, this was one of the most infuriating moments within the game. For the life of me, I could not get past these boys. My men would get surrounded. We were weaker armored, and slowly, one by one, they'd get absolutely swamped. Even Jan Zizka, one of the main characters next to me, would get knocked unconscious on the floor pretty early on. And time again, I just could not work out how to do it. It wasn't like it was close either, like I was just doing something slightly wrong. There was an absolute steamroll from the enemy, taking out all of my men time after time, and boy oh boy oh boy, did it make me goddamn angry. So I tried different techniques. I'd use my gun to try and kill the main lead armored guy, but then the rest of his mates would eventually gang up on me anyway. You see, within Kingdom Come 2, the mechanics in the combat are done so much that sure, you can be pretty well and overpowered, but as soon as you've got 4 or 5 men against you, you don't really stand a chance anyway. So as soon as one side started to win, well, that was pretty much it. I decided to give up on that mission that night and I would go to sleep. The next day coming back to try again, and it took me 3 or 4 more goes until I worked out just that point. The enemy team were winning because of a steamroll. They managed to get a few early kills, and it meant that every other duel after that was 2 or 3 against 1, and they would absolutely demolish my team. So I thought, what if we counteracted that? Instead of me getting caught up in a 1v1 duel with another enemy, what I would do is go around whacking the enemy on the back, getting involved in other duels and trying to overpower them, make it 2v1, and then that guy I then freed up could steamroll the enemy. And this seemed to work. In fact, it worked perfectly. First time trying it, I managed to avoid every one-on-one duel and just go up and join other people's one-on-one fights, turning the tides and weighing the odds in our favor. Because of this, our troops started to get more apparent and we started to outnumber the enemy, and we managed to win it first try with my new technique. This was a prime example of a moment that I thought was broken, an unbeatable mission because I just couldn't quite get it. But really, the game had a way of solving it. Sure, I could have done it if I had skilled up my melee combat enough, or maybe even had some really good archery or crossbow skills. I could have then picked enemies off from a distance and not really had any of these issues, but I didn't. I didn't have quite the skill level in order to do this mission, so I had to find another way of completing it. And it did work eventually. It just took a lot of time and granted a lot of anger, mostly directed towards the game. But as soon as I completed it, I thought, hold on, now that just makes complete sense. I didn't have to jimmy the game. I didn't have to break it or exploit it in any way. I just had to try a new technique in regards to the skills that me as Henry at that point in time had. And it made me think the game just wasn't as bad as I thought. I just was in that moment. This comes up up again. There's another mission where you have to hunt down a cardinal, a priest, and you have to get his clothes in order to disguise as him. I mean, that wasn't the initial intention, but that's how the mission pans out in the end. For this, you have to chase him and his guards down on horseback. Now, horses are a big point in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. In fact, you start with nothing. You can get Pebbles, who's a very slow horse, and slowly upgrade your way through the horses to get faster and faster or stronger horses that can carry more, so on and so forth. But within this mission, because we had to chase down the cardinal, it was about pure speed. Now, I hadn't got the fastest horse. In fact, I'd not really spent too much time riding, so my horse skill was very low, and the cardinal would get away with ease. I'd try everything. I'd try and cut corners. I'd try and follow him exactly, but time and time again, I just could not catch this man on horseback, and once again, boy, was I raging. I thought the game was stupid. How can they add in a mission that is just downright impossible to compete? Much like the ambush mission, it wasn't even close. I would just get absolutely smoked at the very start and not even have a chance of catching up with this guy. I thought Warhorse Studio had completely broken a mission and it just wasn't doable with my skill set. But I couldn't go back. I was locked into this mission. It wasn't like I could return and try and get my level and skills up. I had to find out a way of doing it. So I went into my horse's inventory as soon as the mission started. I took off a lot of the horse's weight that was, well, weighing it down. I took a lot of the loot out of my inventory, and all of a sudden, I could easily keep up with the cardinal. And I completed the mission the first time trying this new technique, taking all of the weight off my horse, and I had that same feeling. God, I just had to find another way of doing it. Sure, I could have done it with my horse armor on if I had a better horse or better riding skill, but I hadn't really worked on it up to that point, so I had to use lateral thinking to get around this mission. I wasn't exploiting the game. These were mechanics built into it. You know, the lighter your horse is, the faster they will go, depending on, of course, other factors as well. And it just made me realize the game wasn't bad. It wasn't broken like I thought it was. I was just bad. I was just not thinking properly. And this led me to another mission. Towards the end of the game, one of the main villains throughout the title is Eric. He is one of the generals from the other side, and you can choose to go to a duel with him. In fact, up to this point, I hadn't even learned the Master Strike. You know, one of the main core combat mechanics within the game. I just missed that Tomcat mission, so I'd done the whole game. In fact, still to this day, I haven't even learned the Master Strike in KCD 2. I completed the whole game without even needing this. And sure, there are a fair few issues. I did get myself killed quite a lot, but about 70 hours in, I just couldn't do it. And this duel with Eric, I couldn't win because I hadn't learnt this Master Strike. And this was the point where I realized, hold on, if Henry in real life hadn't learnt this fighting technique, if he hadn't worked on his swordsmanship in this way, he wouldn't accept this duel. There was actually a way out of it. I could have just said, no, I'm not fighting this guy. And that's what I decided to do. There was an alternative when needed to be. You had to play the game depending on the skills and the character you'd made. Sure, I should have made Henry learn the Master Strike, be a better combat technician and fight in melee, and maybe he could have fought that duel, but I chose not to. So I had to pick the route where he would not fight one-on-ones with one of the best swordsmen in the game. Now, don't get me wrong. Whilst I am complimenting Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, there are other ways around this. It's always going to be with flaws. There should always be an alternative, even if it severely debuffs you, like this duel with Eric. My alternative was just not fighting it or running away. There was another fight or another battle a bit later in the game where you fight in the streets with some of your men within the Jewish quarter of Kuthenberg, and sure, that's pretty much unavoidable. You have to just be good enough at melee for that. There is also, in this same section, a point where you actually have to learn to shoot. You need a projectile weapon in order to kill some guys on the Palisades in order to progress. As far as I'm aware, there's no alternative to that. And these are admittedly some flaws within the game, but hey, this is just the way that the game was made. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, did I want to quit so many times. Did I want to shout at the game and say, this is just downright broken? But there was most of the time a way around it. Just by thinking, just by finding and realizing what character I had created in Henry and playing to those skills, using charisma or using smart thoughts and tactics instead of just brute force and strength. Because in my mind, I was a fighter, but I hadn't translated that to Henry's character within the game. He was not a fighter, he was a thinker, a charisma buff, and I should have played more to those strengths. And if you actually do that, if you play the game to the strengths of the character you create, you're going to have so much more luck. You're going to not have those infuriating moments, and I think that is the way that games are meant to be made. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 does have its flaws, but the core game and the core mechanics are meant to be hardcore RPG styles with no hand holding. And it just brings me back to the point. I think in this time, in this game, it is a real positive when I say the game isn't bad, you are.